All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We've gone through several great sessions, and this is the wrap-up. So appreciate everyone hanging on and learning. I think Brian's session, Ryan's session was super practical, and everyone's able to take away specific learnings and different processes and methods that they put in place to be successful across the board. So again, thanks for sticking with us. So wrapping up, we've got this panel interview. I'm going to be interviewing these two gentlemen. So why don't we start off with some quick introductions?
Sure. Thanks, Manish. My name is Baljit Saini. I work in the Aladdin platform engineering team at BlackRock. BlackRock, as you may know, is the world's largest asset manager, and Aladdin is really at the crossroads of finance and technology. Working in the observability team, I'm responsible for driving the strategy, providing the implementation of the observability platform that Aladdin demands to maintain its resiliency, its performance. So that's what I do.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
I'm Serge Schenkman. I'm managing the SRE and observability team at DriveWealth. DriveWealth is a broker-dealer which provides a brokerage as a service to a number of companies within this continent and across the globe, allowing customers to trade different U.S. asset classes, locally and abroad.
Thank you very much. So, I talked about a few things around observability and rolling it out. Why don't you tell me why observability is important to your company and to your customers, Baljit, if you could.
So we are a platform team within BlackRock. So our customers tend to be internal facing, right? So we have other platform teams as well as other product teams that are customers of the platform that we build. Since the time that I joined this team, the demand from observability has only increased. This is in areas like people want more proactive monitoring. Like they want to get ahead of issues before the customer notices them, right? This is also true for things like usage analytics. So people want to capture the telemetry to be able to understand how users are using their products and to be able to use that information to drive their roadmaps. The third area, or the third category that I can think of is in the realm of capacity planning. So making sure that they are capturing the telemetry that allows them to understand when to increase capacity so as to maintain performance.
Excellent. Same question for you, sir?
Thank you. For DriveWealth, and I'm sure it's unique to many companies that you come from, it is a brand reputation, its ability to understand what we do, how we do it, to be able to deliver value to your customers, both internally and externally, as well as knowing when you need to take action. Get ready to the point where you're aware that something is about to happen, whether positive or negative, and then you react to it in a certain way to support either direction.
What's the biggest challenges? What's the biggest challenge, let's say, that you've had?
DriveWealth been a relatively young company, although it's been in existence for 13 years at this point. But it's been achieving the exponential growth over the last 3-4 years, and scaling with our customers' footprint and demand. It's been a challenge, and that's actually one of the reasons why we've chosen Grafana to be our observability utility and tool, because our previous observability 15 tools that I think Brian described did not do the job, and we weren't able to determine when we needed to take actions. We weren't be able to analyze the blast area of problems or get to one end-to-end picture of health and stability of our platforms. So those are the challenges that exist and because the company is still relatively young and small, we needed a tool and that would give us an ability to have end-to-end one single glass presence and footprint that we can all rely on. And we also separately, as a growing company, we're heavily dependent on logging, whereas it's very voluminous, hard to manage, hard to find that needle in the haystack, and transition from that mentality and philosophy and infrastructure into more of a metrics-based environment and observability standard has been quite challenging.
Yeah, I think everyone will probably nod their head here if I say, is everyone facing scalability challenges, right? I think that's probably top 2 or 3 challenges that we see out there. How about you, Balji?
Yeah, that all resonates with me as well. We've had those challenges, picking the right tool for the job, controlling costs, scaling it up. But there's one other thing that I would like to talk about, and it's to do with the presentation that you did and the 6 steps that you were talking about, and also some of Brian's talk as well about the cultural aspects of it, right? So for us, one of the challenges was to determine where we are, being able to present that maturity level to our users in a way that they can understand, and then help them improve maturity overall, right? So you talked about like the governance and the adoption aspects, right? So that's where we spent a lot of time doing our research, figuring out how to create a model that we can use to help our users see a simple scorecard at the maturity level that they are, and then build like a catalog of all capabilities that we currently have and that we want to build into our observability platform, and map them to these various maturity levels so that people can understand at each level what capabilities they have, and if they want to get more capabilities, like what is the path for that.
Yeah, I think that resonates really well, and it talks about moving from a platform to a product or a center of excellence, and having that kind of vision and the roadmap, right, being part of it and how to implement it, super, super critical. So when you went through the tool choice, right, this is a plug for Grafana, right, at the end of the day, like what were the biggest things? And both of you guys talked about them a little bit, like scalability, but what are like the top 2 things that you looked at that made you go with Grafana versus another solution, or stick with your incumbent solution?
Yeah, we used to host our own Prometheus at one point, and I mean, I was new to the team at that time, but I heard from others about the challenges just maintaining Prometheus at that size. So one consideration for us was the platform that we wanted to move to should scale up to the demand that our users that our users have, right? In addition to that, open standards and adoption of things like open telemetry, that was another thing that was a priority for us. And the last thing that I would mention is the ability to interoperate with the rest of the ecosystem. So for instance, our problem management tools and like our CMDB, the config management database.
Great. Is there the same question for you?
Similar to us as well, but I would also add that there are 2 additional factors that we considered when we were choosing a platform and a tool like Grafana. One is we wanted to expand and give our ability to use the tool to non-business, non-technical teams like business teams, the product teams, so that and not needing to have a large support group for them. So it would be more, more intuitive to them, and they would be able to manage on their own with minimal support and training. So that was Grafana. It came as on top of in that consideration. But also secondary, in our particular line of business, technology that we use and adapt to changes quickly. And we wanted to have a tool, or not only wanted, but needed to have a tool that is open source or has support for a wide variety of different other technologies and platforms. And again, in that sense, Grafana came, on very top, and that was the logical decision for us.
Great, thank you. I know another part of that is partnerships, and that's something critical to a lot of our customers. Like, any comments about like our partnership, the way we partnered with you guys specifically? I think that's something that we're very proud of in our execution.
I would agree with that.
Well, thanks. Planted that question, but thank you very much. So we talked about roadmap. Like, what's next in your journey, right? What's next on your roadmap for observability?
Yeah, we kind of newbies to Grafana in that sense. We started our migration back in April of this year and completed at the end of September. So we're full on Grafana now. But as I alluded previously, the previous tool that we used was heavily log-based, and we are in the process of migrating into metrics-based alerting. Active series is next. We want to do profiling time series. So that's the next for us, as well as reducing our reliance on needing to ingest so much data into Grafana and finding better ways to manage ingest and querying.
Are you tying any of that back to like business outcomes as well? Like, are you seeing that with the expansion of Grafana, better alignment?
There is certainly a better alignment that we see now, with use, with expanded use, and across the company within different teams, and giving people the flexibility of managing what their requirements are, and improving their workload.
Excellent. That's great. And Baljeet, same question. What's next on your roadmap?
Yeah, so we are thinking more about, like, we have a lot of telemetry data that comes in, but how do we derive more value out of it? So things like anomaly detection, building in automatic correlation to be able to drive down those MTTX numbers. So that is top of mind. And the thing that I talked about earlier about the maturity levels, making sure that we are driving adoption for that. So we are partnering with various teams internally, like SRE is a big part of it. And then we also partner with various product teams where we have pilot users that are trying this out. And building that consensus and driving the overall maturity upwards, that is also a priority for us.
And how does that align to some of the business outcomes for you guys at BlackRock?
So nobody can argue against, like, the maturity level of the organization needs to improve as far as observability is concerned, right? So the overall goal is to have not only like a base level of observability compliance across all of the applications, but to instill that drive within the various teams, that they go beyond that and look for achieving more and more maturity within their stacks, and the business benefits that they will derive from that.
Okay, thank you. So this is the question everyone loves to talk about, is AI, right? How do you see AI, in the context of observability, as far as automation, but also, when is AI just going to say, yeah, here's your problem, solve it, and I'll solve it for you?
Yeah, so far we have been looking at AI as an enabler, so not at the point where it's like telling you here is what went wrong and I already fixed it. We're not at that point yet. But we're looking at some of the innovation that is coming out of Grafana itself, like the Grafana Assistant, and its ability to make it easier for people to adopt, to query, to create dashboards, like all of that is great. And we are interested in the other aspects that you mentioned, which is that like with some of the tools like Assert's knowledge graph, the ability to do correlation, to create baselines, and then figure out where the problems are. Like that is also of interest.
Great. Serge, same, Varnia?
Similar for us as well. In addition to those, not in my current role, but in my previous roles, we've done something which we call alert orchestration and automatic recoveries, where a particular alerts with a well-defined runbook would go ahead and automatically execute, then test itself, make sure recovery is done and report it. So I think AI can help us in the sense that, defining those runbooks, identifying an opportunities when this type of orchestration can be used based on either historical or maturity of various application levels and alerts and standard operational procedures.
Yeah, I think if anyone in the room that already owns Grafana or is looking at Grafana, make sure you ask for a demo of Grafana Assist. It's amazing what we're doing with AI right now. I spoke to a current customer, and she talked about how she's using it to create dashboards to find root cause analysis across the board, and it's our internal LLM, right? So we're digging through that. Our agents are swarming to find out what the problem is and where it is. And one thing it does that has been talked about a lot today is adoption. Because it's so easy to use, someone who hasn't done observability or used Grafana before could easily go in there and really get some productivity really quickly with high-value assets that can be created. So call your sales rep, ask me, anyone else in the room from Grafana, happy to show that off for you. All right, so how are you guys organized in your organization right now around observability? We talked about Federated, we talked about centralized, siloed teams.
At this point, I think we're more of a federated organization, which is still maturing our observability organization. Currently, the SRE, the observability organization sits with the SRE, and SRE is driving policies and procedures and plans for observability, that is working well at the moment, but we still, as it's a journey, not a complete process, we're going to be looking into, maturing this observability, discipline further.
Great, thank you. Baljit?
So we are a centralized team. So the observability team, I said, it's part of platform engineering at BlackRock. So similar to other platform engineering teams, our responsibility is to provide the observability platform that is used by product teams, other platform teams. We work very closely with partners in SRE, right? So they are helping us drive adoption. Like we are a small team, so we cannot scale up to that level. So they help provide some of that scaling function for us to be able to drive the initiatives that we want to drive, right? But the responsibility of the observability team is not only like the engineering work required to build the observability platform, but we also do a lot of consultation. So when teams need advice on, do I pick this solution versus the other, as you talked about, right? Like a centralized center of excellence.
Yep.
So we provide that, and then we are also guiding people on best practices.
Got it. So that's the model format that everyone's looking to achieve. That's great. Last question. You guys have gone through the journey, right? Different stages of the journey, but like, what's the one piece of advice that you'd give someone in the room as they start to look at this or embarking on their journey around observability?
So for me, it comes back to like the journey that you were talking about, right? So we are committed to sticking with this effort of improving maturity in the organization. The piece of advice that I would give, and I think this was evident from the talk that Brian gave as well, that you need patience. This is not going to happen overnight. You need to have the structure in place so that people have the required knowledge to go along on this journey with you. But there will be a lot of cultural change that is also required. You'll get some pushback. So building that consensus and then helping everybody move forward, like that is a real challenge.
Excellent, thank you. Last question, Serge, for you.
I would say that the observability and monitoring requirements and just consideration needs to be done up front in the very first initial stage of the planning phases. Otherwise, if observability is an afterthought, if we're only focusing on delivering product and functionality and don't have a good command and control and dashboard to see how it works, it becomes very challenging to catch up and to the point of having mature operations. So that can save a lot of headaches, incident management challenges, recoveries, and organizational reputations overall.
Yeah, I think great points from both of you gentlemen. That you can't set it and forget it, right? You need to go out there. You have to put the plan in place, and you really need to continue to push throughout your organization. So to wrap up, we'll open it up to a couple questions. If anybody has any questions for the gentleman up here, Ryan's back there.
Hey guys, thanks for doing the panel. So during the panel, you guys mentioned that you were using a lot of log aggregation to get your observability data. And coming from where I'm mainly using metrics, I'm wondering what kind of insights that you're able to extract from the log aggregation for alerts and other observability that you can't get or are less ideal to get from metrics.
So again, this all goes back to the level of maturity within the organization and what was done in order to get to this point. There is certain level of details that are specifically buried in the log message, which could be very long and have very detailed for specific function. Those type of that type of information would not be propagated in metrics. So therefore, as part of the maturing or the journey, there needs to be a consideration how you preserve making sure that you can effectively deliver metrics and be able to monitor it, but also the required level of detail is also available when a more in-depth investigation is needed.
Gotcha. So you look at it like logs are typically the first thing that gets added to an application, so they're the first thing you can start using to get your observability?
Or potentially storing details logs somewhere else, only use them if more in-depth investigation is needed.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to add to what Serge said, and this is not exactly answering the question that you asked, but we have this concept of events where these are more structured logs that we store. And recently, somebody was asking me that they want to retain their metrics for longer because they want to understand usage patterns. So I directed them towards this other option that we have. And the reason we have that option is exactly what Serge said. These can be more verbose. They can be stored for longer, for cheaper, and they also allow you to solve the problem at hand.
Thank you. So I was wondering, you talked about logs, metrics. A lot of people are also using distributed tracing a lot more. There is a balance between what you can get from auto instrumentation, which today is easy to get, but it gives you a ton of data that's probably not all necessary and expensive, versus capturing a lot of details and context with custom instrumentation. How do you balance between these things, and how's in your practice between just capturing a lot of data and then deciding what to do with it versus being very specific and going into custom instrumentation, capturing high value
Yeah, it's a balancing act, yes. So if you take the example of tracing, for instance, right? There are now options on Grafana Cloud where you can do like adaptive traces, which means that you need to send all of the data to them, and then they apply some logic to figure out which of the traces to keep, right? Sounds like fairly simple. You just send all of the data, but then you have the problem of how much data you are, like how much compute you are spending to even publish all of this data, and what is the impact on the performance of applications that are publishing this data, right? So you have to balance it out somewhere, and what we have done is we have given flexibility to our users to choose what works best for them. So there are certain safeguards in place where we are saying that, yeah, you cannot just send huge amounts of data to these platforms because obviously it's going to cost us. But we do have sensible like controls, we have sensible defaults, but then we give the flexibility to change those on a case-by-case basis so that people can choose what works best for them.
I would just add that look around the room, I see a lot of signs from organizations who would be very familiar with different regulatory and compliance responsibilities. And I think, in those particular cases, you have a choice, right? You either build a different system that manages those requirements or utilize what's already existing and, and you utilize the Grafana or Alloy to help you manage those requirements. So again, I agree with his points, it's a balancing act, but it would all depend on the requirements and what you're trying to achieve.
I think that's a challenge that all customers face, right? What to capture, what not to capture, how much of it to capture. And the approach these gentlemen are taking, fantastic. We also have a lot of experience there to help guide you guys to make sure, believe it or not, make sure you're not overspending, right? That's something important to us as well.
So I can answer his question also. So one of the things, I run this SRE observability team for Mizugo Americas. We have an intake form where we give the users what they want to onboard into Grafana or any observability tool. We have close to 15 plus tools in my observability platform. So the intake form tells you what the user wants, what they are focusing on, what metrics, what data, what APIs they're interested in. Obviously, that's coming from them. That defines their observability goals for that particular area. So using that, we will determine. We don't go from catch-all and find out what is important. More of what you want is what you see, because we handle like more than 1,500 applications. So we go with who wants what. So intake form is one of the options.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that would seem to be a great benefit of getting into a sizable Grafana implementation is being able to pull together different sorts of metrics and triggers from different sorts of source systems at different levels in your IT infrastructure. Combine things such as query rates in a database coincidental with an uptick in an arriving packet storm or rate off of a network device or something like that. Now you're able to go ahead and cross boundaries and buckets and things like that and actually pull the information together. Now, certainly if there's a problem, we'll get into doing those sort of investigations. But are you finding as you mature your deployments that you're able to pull those things together from the get-go and create incident definitions and playbook responses that are not based solely on a single silo, but are benefiting from the context of crossing multiple silos? Give me an alert on this thing here if I see over in that other discipline over there some other related event that tells us that we've got an issue here.
So there is certainly an advantage or a benefit of knowing the blast area of a particular issue, right? So if there is a problem here, you need to know what it impacts, whether there is impact downstream or there is impact upstream. And the ability to gather metrics and generate alerts and be able to correlate them with different silos or applications or platforms is something that definitely brings a benefit in ability to learn and manage potential issues or incidents up front. I'm not sure if that was exactly the answer to your question, but
Wondering how, if you're getting further into leveraging that to get this, like this as an investigatory, interactive thing to figure out, once we learn these lessons, can we go ahead and basically raise the level that you're doing your observability interaction to a higher level, by combining those broader views, right?
yeah, I mean, we relatively early in that particular process, but we do, just to give you an example, we modernized the way we're monitoring like some of our 400 and 500 alerts that we receive on some of our API endpoints, and be able to more effectively understand whether it's a particular service, whether it's a particular customer that is having those issues, and whether that is related to something that we receive from our vendors, or whether it's internal to us. So the answer is certainly.
And we see that from a lot of customers. They want to pull data in. We have about 250 different connectors for data sources. So they're pulling data from everywhere, and then they want to correlate it back to get down to the investigation of that root cause analysis. So, I'm happy to meet with you afterwards to have a discussion about that, give you some great examples. And with our new Grafana AI assistant, we're doing that even more effectively with something called investigations to swarm on the problem. So 2 areas that we can dig in with you as well.
Just one thing to add to what has already been said. Having all of this data in one place allows you to build what we call like a top-down view, right? So you want to get to that point of correlation, but also to be able to represent the overall health of your system in one view. That is also like quite meaningful and important.
I'm curious on your journeys. Did you see any improvement in your MTTX metrics or improvement in stability? I asked because I was recently trying to find this for my company as well, and I was hoping to see a downward trend as we build out our observability platform, but that wasn't exactly what I saw. In fact, there was almost like an increase in incidents, I think, because as we were training, we were reporting and detecting more incidents than before. So I'm curious, in your experience, did you see an improvement, and how long did it take to see that?
So I wouldn't say we are that far into the journey yet. So this is something that we are like just starting off, right? Where we are trying to get more adoption of what we are trying to do with the maturity levels. What you're saying actually resonates with me, which is that sometimes when you try to reduce incidents by improving observability, you end up with more incidents initially reported, right? But as long as the attributions work, and I'm not saying that we are at that stage yet, you should see an overall reduction eventually. But that is the part about being patient about this. The expectation should not be that just because like a percentage of the organization has adopted this, that you will immediately see impacts.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask, how important is it for your organizations to use tools that adhere to open standards? We've talked about open telemetry, and with Grafana, who is very compatible with standards like that. How important is it, and kind of from your organization standpoint, what drove that change? Or are you considering that if you are going towards that?
Yeah, we've gone from like using a lot of different tools to consolidating, right? And when we're consolidating, one of the things that is important for us is to avoid vendor lock-in as much as possible. So the open standards and adherence to standards like open telemetry really helps drive that decision. So that is, I would say, the number one consideration for us.
And it's similar for us as well. The vendor locking and not having as much freedom to integrate with other vendors that need to support your business is sometimes what, when you talk to certain vendors and they have their niche and their, corner case that may be applicable to a particular company, but when, you try to use industry standards or industry standard technologies and tools, which are also open source, open source with open source usually gives you a very good, opportunity for expansion and improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you guys. I think great insight into two companies that are at kind of different stages of maturity in here, and the success that they've had, and like the challenges, and then also what comes next. All critical pieces ties in well with all the themes that we talked about today. I really appreciate everyone's participation.